All right, what's up? Going to be talking about how you can speed up your farming, how you can speed up the process of getting gold, especially in JR, and some, not all strategies to improve the efficiency of this. So to start off, you want to use global full map damage units, right? And so some of these units are going to be stuff like Felina, stuff like Archimedes Evolved, Crispy is good, Amaterasu is of course always a good option, and these are units who are going to use their abilities to be able to deal full map damage. Now, I've stated a few units, but I have not included Slime King, and the reason I say Slime King is not good for this is because although he does do a lot of damage, although he does affect the entire map, although he also does provide a stun, he is not going to be good because his ability briefly pauses the game, right? It's a very, very brief pause, but it is enough to the point where he does more harm than he does good, so you don't want to be utilizing him in your maximum efficiency farming setup. All right, next up, you want to utilize long range units, stuff like Jiraiya or stuff like Clyde and Flamey, right? Jiraiya is a bit more commonly used now if you do have access to him, but of course you can always go back to the good old Clyde, Flamey, Speedy combination, which is the classic way to be able to farm very quickly. Of course, not going to be as fast as Jiraiya. They don't have the entire map in their range, but they do have a big deal of it, and they are able to farm pretty fast. All right, next up, you want to use speed buffs like Speedy and Horus, right? You see how I have a Speedy here. It was buffing up the Jiraiya before and the Amaterasu. Right now, it is buffing up the Clyde and the Flamey. I don't have Horus right now, but if you did have Horus, putting him in between the Crispy and the Felina would be a good option. Of course, you could swap out the Felina with an Amaterasu or something. It's just good to use more speed boost, right? Because more attacks mean you kill stuff faster. You kill stuff faster means you are able to farm faster, right? And then, of course, you also want to use Mighty and Hellhound if needed, right? Like, let's say in this situation, my Crispy was unable to one-shot the units on JR Hard. I could use a Hellhound or a Mighty just to make sure that he was one-shotting them. Just to make sure that, his ability is actually serving a use and being able to clear faster, right? And so that's just a good way to use buffs to increase your farming efficiency, to do, that improvement in speed, right? And so I think another way to increase your farming speed, right, is to utilize no Wi-Fi or to utilize an ad blocker, right? And so what this allows you to do is this allows you to be able to get to the way faster, to get completes faster. As you see, I've been farming King 1-5 all the way waves 1 through 5. Monitor doesn't appear, right? I use an ad blocker. Monitor is completely prevented from appearing, which means I won't lose those few seconds of time slowed down. If I am using a macro, I don't run the risk of accidentally clicking on that play ad button and then I end up playing an ad, which completely ruins the purpose of the macro. You can also, if you don't want to use an ad blocker, which will probably require the use of an emulator, you could just cut off your Wi-Fi, in which case, if you do end up clicking on the monitor with the macro, it won't do as much harm because it won't actually open up that ad. So you can just have it so that it just clicks to continue the game rather than clicking on an ad and ruining the auto clicker, right? Yeah, that's pretty much it for the whole ad blocker idea, helping out with your macros. But you also want to play the level where you're going to be one-shotting everything, right? So let's say you're presented with the option to farm JR normal or JR hard. You could only one-shot the stuff on JR normal. You can't one-shot everything on JR hard. So although JR hard gives more summoning stones, you still want to do JR normal, right? Because you can one-shot stuff, you'll be able to get clears faster, and the few summoning stone difference that you do get from JR hard, not going to be worth it if you're not one-shotting stuff, right? Especially if it's taking many hits to kill stuff, you run the risk of having something like a Rage Fist Shaman being able to cast and ruining your run entirely, right? This guy right here, or even something like a Dark Knight, even something like this Wolf Rider here. Just having enemies cast, which runs the risk of losing a run. Just if you're farming for especially long periods of time, AFK, with an auto clicker, just play the level where you one-shot stuff. The other levels that might give a little bit more rewards might not be worth it anyways. And then finally, last tip that I'm going to be talking about here is you don't want to do summons as you get them, right? As you see here, I have 50,000, almost 51,000 summoning orbs. I'm not summoning them now because, of course, my main goal is to be able to grind for Hellhound, get 3 gold Hellhound. But let's say you were farming something like JR normally. You want to do most of your orb summons at once, right? You don't want to just do it every 100, every 100, every 100. you know, every few times you do get the opportunity to do it, because that's going to slow you down in the long run. It's really not going to be worth it. I'd say the one situation where you do it is, you know, when you can get a summon off, it will make a difference in being able to one shot or two shot stuff, right? Like, let's say, you know, you're a couple thousand gold off of being able to get a Clyde or a Flamey that is able to one shot stuff on JR hard, right? In which case, you know, do your orb summons. But otherwise, when you're just normally going about your farming, you don't want to do it every 100, every few hundred, maybe even every few thousand. You do it all at once, save a lot of time, especially when you're going to be farming for a long time. But that's going to be it for this video. I just want to talk about a few, not all of the tips for getting more efficient farming times, for being able to farm better, for being able to get, you know, more gold, more of whatever resource you're looking for. That's going to be it for this video. Like, subscribe, and yeah, see ya.